I thought that skit at the end was pretty funny of him getting that sample from Soldier Boy saying, Nas the one, he said that hip hop is dead. And it was interesting how like Southern rappers really thought that that was a dig at them when Nas was kind of talking about maybe rap hip hop is dead from a New York perspective.
It
Mm,
was. I mean, as far as I think that's probably one of the worst eras in rap, man, because it was like the ringtone era as well. And it
yeah.
was just like it was like a lot of like dance tracks for the sake of dance tracks. Like I mean, no shade to Young Jock, but like the meet me in the club, going that like that that era of rap music, which it's fine to have that kind of stuff, but there was just no balance. There was not enough.
Let me put you on game.
Some music. Let's talk some raps, talk some hippity hop. We got Nas with his most recent offering, his new album Magic, produced by Hit Boy. If you're not familiar with Nas, he's an MC from Queens, been doing this for a couple decades. Got some classic albums and some classic hits under his belt. He's recently seen a career resurgence with his albums being produced by Hit Boy, so people can't say that Nas don't got beats no more. um, uh, Magic is kind of a surprise album. I don't think many people were expecting it, considering how recently King's Disease 2 dropped. But I think for me, it was a pleasant surprise. I really enjoyed this project. I think that there's a lot to like about it from a production standpoint, of course, because Hit Boy really doesn't miss. And then there's a lot to like about it from Nas in terms of his rapping. I think he sounds really engaged and he sounds really clear and present on the album. Bars for days, flows for days, and I really enjoyed it. What about you?
Yeah, man. Like you said, I don't know if you intended that pun, but Hit Boy doesn't miss.
Pun not
um,
intended, but yeah, I guess we'll take it. A good one.
yeah, the album really brought me back to the simpler times of Nas's beginning in the rap game. It's somewhat, and the album in terms of content as well as production wise is like a a, a come full circle moment, you know, um, where he was the young cat in the '90s during the boom bap rap era with those heavy samples of the '70s music and stuff like that, and who was wise beyond his years, and now he's 27 years later. He's still oozing at the seams of all that knowledge and is getting similar great type of production that is leaning off of some of that boom bap style, but more of that mid to late '90s style of production. That's very gritty, but also relatively engaging. And that, alongside the well-crafted production by Hit Boy, really brought us back to that style of him delivering messages that is exemplary of who he is as an artist. Someone who's always been very poetic, someone who's always been very profound with some of the things that he just drops on us, and the jewels that he kind of gives, and the insight that he has. Being a man who's able to see, who's been to the top and is seeing kind of the mountain peaks, but also understands what it's like to be in the gutters. He still seems to have his ears to the streets, and he still seems to be engaged with the young crowd, if in more of, I guess, a mentorship kind of role at this point in his career. But it's really exciting to see Nas just doing his thing, and I really enjoyed this project as well.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into the track list. Speechless, a great opener. I really like the guitar on that. It's really interesting, but also hectic and a little bit off kilter. Nas effortlessly switching flows. And I love the pounding bass on there and how it kind of intersects with his flow in the chorus. That goes right into Meet Joe Black. I think here is where you realize that, if you haven't already, that Hit Boy is an elite producer and Nas is an elite rapper. I love how he switches up his flows again and the double time on the hook. Ugly was super off kilter as well, but the beat was really interesting with how Hit Boy kind of flipped that piano. And I also love how how analog and fuzzed out the beat sounds. It almost sounds kind of like it was made in the in the 1930s in a way. It kind
Yeah.
of makes me picture one of those skipping black and white soundless movies. And in terms of subject matter, it's a really interesting track about how jealousy and hate can incite or cause violence. But yeah, really strong opening, and it kind of surprised me a little bit with how strong the album opened. Well, what did you feel about that segment?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that this first song had him reflecting on his past, going through Queensbridge, and it's so fascinating how he's still able to rap from that perspective all these years later, and is still so grounded in his upbringing. And I really enjoyed, like, the cascading pianos that were added through the production of this song. It really stood out, juxtaposed to that grittiness. And I found, I kind of, the sound to me was kind of like a space western in a way, and
That's interesting.
yeah, it gave me that kind of feeling. And Hit Boy, he's on one, especially with this album, production wise. Then going right into Meet Joe Black, I had a hard time distinguishing these two songs because it just really seamlessly flowed one into another. And the hook confused me a little bit because it sounded a little choppy, and I didn't really understand what the context of Meet Joe Black was until I did some digging. And Joe Black is the personification of death in the movie that shares the same title as this song, and that made his hook all the more hard. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
like, I'm digging it. And I love how, like, he's definitely a Gen Xer in his references, especially on this album. Like, some millennials like myself, as well as some Zoomers, are not really going to pick up on some of the references. So whether it's like a Meet Joe Black or other, like Carlito's Way that he references later in the project, he doesn't really care that you're not from his era. He's just going to drop his references, and if you want to look into it, you'll figure it out.
But the people listening to it are probably from his era, most likely. So they're right at home.
Exactly. And I thought that skit at the end was pretty funny, of him getting that sample from Soulja Boy saying, "Nas the one, he said that hip hop is dead." And it was interesting how, like, Southern rappers really thought that was a dig at them, when Nas was kind of talking about maybe hip hop is dead from a New York perspective. And just that whole controversy. Do you remember those days, on a side tangent of the whole hip hop is dead era? What was it like for you?
It was. I mean, as far as, I think that's probably one of the worst eras in rap, man, because it was like the ringtone era as well. And it was just like, it was like a lot of like dance tracks for the sake of dance tracks. Like, I mean, no shade of Young Jock, but like, meet me in a club, going that, like that era of rap music, which it's fine to have that kind of stuff, but there was just no balance. There was not enough balance in the rap game, where it was just entirely dominated by kind of like fast food type music. So I kind of, it might have been a little pretentious from Nas's perspective to just declare hip hop dead, because hip hop isn't one thing to one person, but he had an argument, I would say, for, I think, 2006. Yeah, I think he had an argument.
Yeah, I mean, that's an argument for another day. But going back into the album, Ugly, that song really, and I got to emphasize the ugliness, because it was the classic type of Nas beat that he's built his career on. And it showcases him taking a concept and just running with it in the ways that he always does, like whether it's a song like One Mic or Rewind, or the song where he kind of raps as if he's a gun. He talks about the ugliness of the world, and he compares that to weather, and how that is the spirit of life outside. When you walk outside, just the ugliness of the world, the evil doings of man, the people getting killed, people getting assaulted, having to watch their back. And it just showed me that Nas is really tuned in artistically and poetically, and he still has that spirit, which I really enjoyed. And then going into the second stretch of the album, 40, 16 building, he was in the storytelling mode, reflecting on his rise and hood stardom, very triumphant and gritty beat that really leads you to believe that he's going to say something really important. With bars like "Pardon the haters, it's my Billy behavior." It's like, okay, Nas, you're really flexing on letting people know who you are. The song overall didn't land that well for me, but I appreciated some of what he was able to do. And then moving into one of my favorite songs, Hollywood Gangsta, I enjoyed this production a lot. It was very calming. It was very luxurious. And he embodied this kind of like persona that was perfect in the way he titled the song, Hollywood Gangsta, talking about being on a jet with his 12 tenants, meaning that, like, he has a private jet, And in order to offset the, the bewildering cost of owning a private jet, he allows other people to ride on the jet with him, and they pay as it's kind of like a shared system. And I thought that was,
It's a responsible flex.
Yes, and like he's just dropping so many gems and jewels here and there about how to make it as a wealthy person and how to continue to innovate and to just make wise financial decisions. And then, dropping bars like the scars of martyrs, the path of bastard seeds, effect of absentee fathers passed on with ease. Just a chef's kiss of poetry, talking about the impact that, absentee fathers have on men in the hood, and how whole cliques each other's counselor, which was just really insightful, and just, Nas at his best in his bag. And then finally, Woo for the Children, that beat was cool. And I love the references to, Wu-Tang, Old Dirty Bastard, as well as Biggie. And just a style with the loop that they created that was really exemplary of, again, that 90s boom bap era.
Yeah, I agree. This is a strong stretch of the album for me. I think 4016 Building is one of my favorites. It has a sound that's very reminiscent of like 70s soul. I think it has a very American Gangster kind of feel. I think that kind of beat typically is like a recipe for success. It's classic Hit Boy. It's very reminiscent of some of the production you saw on Benny the Butcher's album with Hit Boy as well. Hollywood Gangsta, of course, like you told that story really well. Nas, I think he's at a really good place in terms of storytelling. He does a good job of just showing you exactly where he is in his life. Woo for the Children, I think, is really interesting as well. It's a good track about the pitfalls that come with affluence and influence, and what the people around him have to put up with in order to be close to him and a part of his life. That goes right into Wave Gods. That's such a fun track. I think ASAP is one of the more diverse rappers. I think he can go over just about anything, and I think he proves it here. Really great beat by Premier, classic scratching from him, really charismatic, great verse from ASAP, and Nas as well there as well. They kind of have this really great chemistry together, which isn't something that you would expect, but something that's really enjoyable. The Truth, I love this beat. It's kind of a really somber, dark track about Nas not really being impressed with violence for violence sake, and robbing people and hurting people within your community, and him not being impressed by that, and the false bravado that can come with something like that. Dedicated, I think, is a really great closer. I love the scratching and the classic R&B sample, and I think the bass works really well here as well. I think the bass on this album from Hit Boy is really it really hits hard over the course of the album, and I think it's a really hits hard here. And I love the beat switch towards the end as well. But yeah, just a really strong closer and a really strong album overall. It's I don't know if it's an album that is gonna stick or resonate in terms of the lexicon of music listeners, but I do think just as an offering towards the end of the year, kind of sneaking it in, I think it's a low key album that I think will probably go underrated in his catalog, but I think it's really solid.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on this last stretch, I really enjoyed Wave Gods. I'm definitely a fan of A$AP Rocky. And so the production of this song, you getting Raekwon, Casanova Run, CL Smooth, Cool G Rap, and Snoop Dogg on a hook, and just the way he infused all their voices from iconic 90s songs into the song was really fun for me. And just a lot of charisma and flows between Nas and A$AP. Man, that they did a really good job there. A lot of enthusiasm and kind of a trip down memory lane, so to speak. And the Truth, like, he had a line here, I've been outside since $1.50 was the only way to get your face done. If that doesn't kind of show you where Nas has been, you know what I mean? For our listeners who might not be aware, $1.50 is a scar that is inflicted upon people primarily in like gang situations, who, if you're trying to like prove a point to somebody, you slash them from mouth to ear, which requires, allegedly 150 stitches or more. And it's one of those scars that if you have, it's kind of almost a status symbol in a way, because you did something to really irk someone, and you're likely gang affiliated, no offense. Yeah. There is the random acts of violence that happens, but that's one of those things there that is kind of a standout, to say the least. And just to show you how far Nas has come, you know, avoiding instances like getting a $150 scar, but still being able to talk about it all these years later and it not sounding forced. You know what I mean? It's really fascinating to me. And then Dedicated, a great closer. It had kind of like a West Coast bounce to me with a 90s boom bap sampling that really created a dynamic sound that was just very infectious. And then the beat switches and it sounds very close to like a mob movie score. And it has the shades of hip hop that Nas and Hit Boy brings into it, and that just make it really flavorful and enjoyable. And again, I agree, a great closeout. And he says it best at the end of the song: pure magic, no tricks, no tricks, just pure magic. It was a nice project that I really enjoyed thoroughly, man.
Yeah, let me get you 3 favorite tracks, bro.
Yeah, for me, I gotta go Dedicated. This is a toss up because there's legit like 6 songs that I really like. But yeah, Dedicated, Hollywood Gangsta, and I would say Speechless.
Yeah, I'll go Speechless as well, and I'll go 4016 Building and Wave Gods.
Yeah, I love those songs too.
Yeah, solid project, man. If you had to recommend this to our listeners on a scale of hard pass to must listen, where do you sit?
For me, this album and this project is highly recommended. I enjoyed it overall. It was a bit clunky in certain spots, but other spots, Nas and really nailed it alongside Hit Boy with the production. And he lyrically has a message to deliver. The album doesn't do more than it needs to, which I appreciated. At a runtime of 29 minutes. It doesn't really overstay its welcome. And I definitely feel you in the catalog of Nas's projects, which is at 15 albums official now. It's definitely going to get lost in there, but he has shown that he can still hang with other contemporary artists from a music creation perspective. And just because he's, you know, wealthy doesn't mean that he's not an artist still.
For sure. I'm going to echo your sentiments and go highly recommend as well. I think it's a really well put together album. It's kind of been a career renaissance for Nas in a way. I think these projects are coming off as really authentic and really grounded from a musical and artistic perspective. And I think it shows just in how quality they are and well put together. So I'm looking forward to see what I think him and Hit Boy need to keep doing it. I think they need to keep riding this wave, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with his next project or King's Disease 3 or whatever's down the pipeline. But really enjoyable album and a really good listen.